Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. If this is your first time listening, then a very special welcome. Harmonious World is all about introducing musicians and chatting with them to find out how they compose or perform their music. For this episode, I'm joined by pianist Marina Arsenijevic, who I also interviewed in November 2022. Marina has a new album out, which is all about her Chopin obsession. And what you're listening to now is her version of the Minute Waltz in D-flat major, which is one of the last set of waltzes that Chopin published just before his death. I'm very much looking forward to chatting with Marina again, and I hope you enjoy listening in.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's so lovely to talk to you again.
I was so happy when Max sent me a message about you, and I said, sure, I want to talk to Hillary.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic to talk to you again. And I love this album. In fact, I've just been listening again to it. It's just a beautiful album.
Oh my goodness. Do you know that RPE Ireland has twice as album of the week in March, one time in March, one time in April, and I was so impressed of all the places Ireland.
Oh, but it's lovely. I think there is something about Chopin particularly, and I think if you're a virtuoso pianist, which you obviously are, you just make these beautiful pieces of music come alive.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to hear that. And I have been infatuated by Chopin since I forgot since when, but since I was 4 or 5 years old, probably.
So what prompted this recording?
So what happened was, ever since I started play piano, Chopin was really my love. And I have been winning competitions national in Europe, and Chopin was always something that was, I could say, my forte. And my professor would say romanticism is something where you will find yourself later on. And so since I don't know how old, I started to have concerts with Chopin. But at one point, one of the promoters said, how about all Chopin waltzes, all Chopin preludes, all Chopin nocturnes, polonaises, scherzos? And then I said, oh, that's interesting. So I dive into literally all opus of waltzes, all opus of nocturnes, opus of polonaises and scherzos, and some of them I like better than others, ballades. So then after all my Tesla Rhapsody, you know that, I said, okay, so how about I do my big classical outing?
Yeah.
And that's how it started. And so I started with my groups that I record and then film videos and stuff. And I said, how about we do all Chopin? So they were so happy. And it took some time, obviously, to record all of them. But then I, in cooperations with my agent, they said, I think it would be really the best to release them for around Valentine's Day. And so it was like Be My Valentine. Frederick Chopin.
It is the most romantic, isn't it? The most romantic music. It's his,
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. But you know, if you dive deeper into Chopin's life and where he came from and how where he ended up, I found lots of similarities with my immigrant life. So Chopin had to leave his home due to Russian aggression. How timely is that?
yeah,
And he left to France, as many other artists at that time, to be able to freely compose and create. So most of his work is created in France, in Paris. And I would say that I felt in his work everything that I had in myself fleeing or leaving Yugoslavia after the really bloodiest war in Europe before this one in Ukraine.
yeah,
And so I felt all these nuances of his cry for his home, nostalgia, melancholy. And also, if you look at his works like Polonaises or Revolutionary Etude or even some ballads, it's that fight for right. And so, in my approach of this Chopin recording was more rather than putting a technical nature of Chopin's compositions at the forefront, I was more molding it to a very sophisticated emotional story using technique when needed. But it wasn't my first, how can I say, my first idea to show my pianism and virtuosity. I used it to explain all those nuances in feelings that I felt Chopin had while creating it. And so I can be a little more even how I can say specific in the terms that my experiences of being in wars and living in a country where every 50 years we were in some sort of a world war or civil war, all generations, my ancestors were affected. And I, as the only child and a girl, had to leave my home and possessions and my parents at the time as the only child. Certainly, I can understand Chopin very well, more than other pianists who didn't have these experiences. So I really use music as a story to express all these feelings
yeah,
through interpretation. And that's why I started to compose because you want to express everything you have and how I can express through somebody else's work. And
yeah,
I could through Chopin. I just have all these different nuances and feelings that I felt.
yeah. And I think obviously last time we were talking about your own compositions, and this time we're talking about your interpretations. I think they're the same thing in a way. I mean, I think music is it's almost like you are collaborating with Chopin in a way that you collaborate with other musicians and just going back over centuries back to his life. And I think
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And why we say popular classics, let's say, because those compositions surpasses their time, composer's time.
yeah,
And if we are talking about Chopin, you have many that were used in vaudeville or let's say ballad that I recorded, G minor number one. It was used in the movie The Pianist when in a scene where a German Nazi officer finds Polish pianist sitting in a alone during the war, and he finds him and he says, who you are? He says, I'm a pianist. You're a pianist? Well, show me if you're a pianist. And that's he starts. So they
Right.
used even in a movie, right?
Yeah.
So there is a like fantasy impromptu that is very famous, right? It's
Yeah.
very popular. Maybe people don't know the name of it outside of classical music, but when they hear, they said, "Oh my God, I know this." And so it was the middle section was used in a popular vaudeville song. I'm always chasing rainbows. And but if you talk about Chopin's inspiration, how he created this fantasy impromptu, he used from Beethoven. So we were all inspired by somebody who was before us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
From yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. From Beethoven into Chopin into you.
Yeah. Well, good. That's very good. Thank you.
Well, that's very interesting that you should mention that, because at the beginning of the podcast, I'm going to play an extract from, or maybe even all of it, of the Minute Waltz, because that has passed into popular culture. In this country, it's been used for a long time as the introduction to a radio show.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
for many years. So,
And you know what's interesting? That's interesting that you say that because when I was in Yugoslavia, I was like be beginning my big career, and TV, major national TV, they would they would film me, and They filmed the video of Minute Waltz with me, and guess what? That was the intro before news at 8 p.m.
wow.
My Minute Waltz. So then I became so popular,
There
like a
you
popular
go.
culture. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
how it happened with a Minute Waltz.
there we are. And so now at this point in the podcast, I'm going to play a bit of uh, the fantasy
Impromptu.
impromptu, because I think you're right. I think people will recognize it, but then they'll go, I didn't know that was Chopin.
Yes, and I don't know what's the name of that.
No. I sometimes think that my show and the questions I ask will help people in I don't know if you have them in America, but we have a huge culture of pub quizzes. And I think quite often those are the questions that come up, who composed the Minute Waltz, or who composed the Fantasy Impromptu, that sort of thing.
It's funny. Well, I don't think they have in American culture now.
No.
I would not say that they would use classical music in pop quiz.
No, but we do from time to time here, certainly.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, every once in a while I'm a useful person to have on a pub quiz team.
That's funny. In this selection of how many pieces I have, 16, 18, I don't know. 16. Yeah, I think 16 pieces of Chopin. Some of them are very, like we just mentioned, Fantasy Impromptu, Minute Waltz. There's another waltz that's very famous. It's C sharp minor. That's very, very famous. And you can hear that in many different, I would say, movies and pop music. They use it, and middle part too, and the famous theme. And I would say, if you talk about Chopin, which is not on my album, but I have a recording. By the way, because this became so popular, this album, in streaming too, I'm working on Chopin Obsession #2.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, when it's done, we can meet again.
Absolutely. I'm interested in the recording process. How did you sit down and do them all in one session, or are they all in different bits?
I would say I'm really a performer by
Oh
nature.
yeah.
So I prepare for performance. So I would pick, I don't know, 5 or so for this session.
Right.
And I would perform. And the audio engineer that works with me, he knows that it's my performance. So he would pick, I would say that probably the best take is my first take.
Right.
But then if I have to, redo some other pieces, we redo it. But he usually let me play the full piece. And
right.
We would take, maybe if it's necessary, to take from take 2 or take 3. But usually the best take is take 1 every time I record. So we would have, let's say 4 or 5 done in one session. And then we would say, how about usually we meet a week later, and then say, that's about another 4 or 5.
Right.
And that's how I work. And because I had lots of other performances and stuff, so it's not all done in 3 weeks.
No.
So, it's not done in 3 weeks, but takes, I don't know, for something like this, took maybe 2.5 months or so.
Right.
Finalize, but with everything, with editing, and then I listen a million times, and my agent listen a million times, and producer listen. So you all listen, and I really understood that my forte is performance. I'm not like Glenn Gould was, to sit down in a room and just record, and he was happy with just recording. I love audience, and I need to have audience to get that feedback. And I always have audience when I record. I mean, my friends or something,
right?
Or my people around me. So it's not live concert, but
no,
it's not. But it's like a live concert because I have audience.
Well, yeah, because actually, even if you only have 2 or 3 people, there's still an audience, aren't they? Even if it's not 200 or 300 or 1,000.
Oh, absolutely. And that's how I feel the most focused, the most. I remember when I had my own teachers when I was younger, they would say, "Oh, Marina performs actually the best when she has bigger audience." somebody froze when they have bigger audience. I actually play the best when I have biggest audiences. So that's the nature of a performer, right?
Yeah.
So that's how the recording. And I always thought I'm not the best recording artist, but now in this new age of recordings, when you can record anywhere, with the good equipment and the best audio engineers and producers, I feel that I can do it really well because it can be as a performance.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you for telling me. One of the things about this podcast is to get people to talk about what they do that is different. And I think you've done that really well. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's really interesting. So what's
Well,
next?
yeah.
Okay.
What's next is Chopin number 2.
Yeah.
What's next? What's next is I'm working, when we talked about Tesla, I had several kind of a Tesla Rhapsody performances with a video that is synced with the Rhapsody that shows Tesla's life through the video.
Oh wow.
If I have to say, I maybe mentioned last time, but now it's really in full bloom. I'm working on Life of Tesla musical.
Oh
And
yes, you
actually,
mentioned that you were
yes,
starting that.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it's a long process, and I think we're finishing the whole story scenes by the end of the summer. And actually, one of the collaborators of mine is at the Royal Opera House in
Oh,
London.
yeah.
Yes, and we have actually a very interesting team of, I would say, advisors. And they're also from England. You guys have West End and stuff, and
Yeah.
so in between American influences and that British touch, I think we're creating something very different and special, showing Tesla in different light that many didn't know.
Yeah.
So that's that, and then I will have a pretty interesting big concert for Women's Equality Day in Washington, D.C. and Kennedy Center on August 25th, where I also will play many compositions that will have a video synced with my performance. And
Ah,
that will be something different. And as a matter of fact, right after our interview, I have a talk with the producers, and so they know exactly what I need, how I'm envisioning all that. So I think that will be very interesting to celebrate women's
yeah.
equality with my different um, influences from different parts of the world in piano with the video. And I will have some of the live musicians on stage, but I will also use a backup tracks of pre-recorded symphony orchestras, and I will be live. So in today's world, you can do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. That sounds
That
fantastic.
Yeah, so maybe you can fly from England.
Absolutely. Yeah. Honestly, this is my biggest trouble that every time I talk to somebody who's over in America, I go, okay, I need to go to that. And of course, I can't go to everything, but I'd love to.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, one of these days we will meet in one place.
Absolutely. Definitely. So yeah, fantastic. Oh, Marina, it's so lovely to talk to you again. Thank you. And I will speak to you either when the Tesla musical
Life of
comes out.
Tesla.
Yeah, Life of
Yes.
Tesla comes out, or Chopin number 2, Obsession number 2.
Oh my God. So we will be the first to know because
Yeah,
you've only
fantastic.
really covered. So thank you very much for always encouraging and supporting what I do.
Of
And I'm
course.
looking forward to listen to this podcast and to promote through my social media.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really good to talk to you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Hillary.
Okay, bye,
Thank you.
Marina.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to that conversation with Marina, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It's such a pleasure to talk to her. So I'm now playing that C-sharp minor waltz that she talked about. So please share this podcast with your friends, with your colleagues, with anybody who you think likes music. There is something for everybody in the guests that I've interviewed. Enjoy listening to this last little bit of Marina Arsenijevic, and thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.